Welcome to the Responsible Marketing Podcast, conversations about marketing, sustainability, and how we can all help in becoming more responsible organisations. I'm Jo, a marketing strategist and consultant with a career spanning corporate, small medium business and self-employment, incorporating marketing and commercial in various guises, and now flying the flag for a more sustainable and kinder future. In this episode, I'm joined by Stephen Clark from Johnson Clark, residential and commercial surveyors for Yorkshire and the North East of England, talking about how even when your business seems as sustainable as possible, there are still opportunities to capture. Let's dive straight in. Hi and welcome to the podcast. I'm absolutely delighted to have Stephen Clark from Johnson Clark with me today. Hi Stephen.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity
Good.
to have a chat with you.
It's an absolute pleasure. I'm excited to hear some stuff that you've been doing. So do you want to just do a quick intro about Johnson Clark, about what you do and where you're based and who you deal with?
Yeah, so Johnson Clark are a building surveying architectural firm. So we provide building surveys normally for residential properties. So if someone buying a new house wants to get something looked at before they make that commitment. And architectural side, again, similarly, once someone's bought it, they may want to extend it or do alterations. Happy to help with those, anything up to sort of rural developments that may be up to 5 or 6 units at a time.
Okay, so making people's homes happier homes.
Yeah, we try to.
Really, yeah.
We like to work with the people. We like to think we don't just give them a product. It's part of what we do is to provide that service that goes alongside it.
Yeah, I know you're very much in touch with your customers, aren't you? And yeah, want to make them happy. Your building that we're sat in at the moment is amazing, isn't it? It's just, I mean, it's a beautiful part of the world. It's only 20 minutes down the road from me, which is also lovely. But, you know, you are out in the sticks a little bit and the building really reflects that. Just tell me a bit more about the building.
It's kind of in line with with who we are. You know, it's a rural setting. It's a small rural office complex, Hurling Courtyard offices. We were fortunate to be involved in the architectural services for the site over a number of years. It's been added onto the owner, landlord, as a relationship we'd had with them for a long time. So when we were working on this, we saw the opportunity to be a tenant really and get moved in. Yeah.
And so tell me a bit more about the building then, because it's I mean, obviously, is it wood cladded and stuff? It's quite sustainable in itself, isn't it, the building?
Yeah, there's a mix. So with all rural developments like this, we like to try and mix the materials up so it looks that sort of rural mix of stone. There's some cladding, there's some brick around the site, as well as it looking right in the area. The client had a big drive on sustainability. So there is ground source heat pump that's powered from a large pond behind the building. We have solar panels on all the available roofs that are there. There's a wind turbine. There's battery generating backup batteries that are there. Charging points for EV cars. All that's been sort of put in by the landlord wanting to sort of drive it. And then obviously the building fabric itself. At the time, we were under an older set of building regulations, but they wanted to do a fabric first approach and really up the insulation level. So it's a pretty efficient building to run.
Yeah, so it fits, as you said before, actually, it fits really nicely with Johnson Clark as well, doesn't it? So
it does, yeah.
The kind of values that you live by. Could you explain a bit more about that for me?
So there's less scope for this now, but in recent years, in the past, there was option to over-insulate a building, go above and beyond, and we would normally try and encourage clients to do that. There's a point where it becomes less worthwhile with the extra investment, a diminishing return on the amount of insulation, so you end up with very big, thick walls for a relatively small return. But there is an amount above and beyond you could do until very recently that was worthwhile, and we would encourage clients to do that. Energy prices are only going to go up, we suspect. So the opportunity there to reduce your energy usage, and we'll advise clients on that from a very early stage, or at least have the conversation with them as to whether it's something that they are interested in, and maybe encourage them to make it part of the brief that they give us. Yeah.
So I think a lot of people now, like you say, about the energy cost of everything going up, or it's fluctuating anyway, but certainly they rose really quickly, didn't they? And I think most house owners are looking for ways to do that, so it's great that you can offer that. And the fact that it's kind of built into your business anyway, so you kind of like almost walking the talk as well, aren't you? Being in a building that's very sustainable, and clearly your landlord's very up for that as well. He's very forward thinking, I guess.
I think he probably is. Like, he owns it, so he's got an interest in reducing those energy costs from a commercial point of view, obviously. But people are becoming aware of it. We'll have those conversations, even on building surveys. You know, in the past when energy wasn't the highest cost at your house. It was less of the conversation. Or I know when I bought my own property, it was on oil. It didn't bother me going to it, whereas now I'm sort of quite acutely aware of how volatile those prices can be. So people are now looking back at whether the things they can do to their property to make it more efficient.
Yeah, okay. And have those kind of values always been ingrained in Johnson Clark? Is that from when you very first started the business?
Yeah, so we set up the business in January 2017. Set up from a business partner, Ian Johnson. And it has been, we've always been very residential client focused. And since then, it's always been part of what people have considered, I think.
Yeah.
People are becoming more and more aware of it. I know today we're going to talk a little bit about that in the business sense, but clients are aware of it. Whether they ask up front, what are your accreditations or your credentials or your CO2 or your ESG policies, we're not getting those questions at the moment, but it's in people's peripheral vision, and if they can, they pick up on it, they notice these sort of things, and I think it has a bearing on them, and I think it's just a responsible thing to do, really.
And we like responsibility, don't we?
Yeah.
That is kind of like what I'm trying to attain with these podcasts, actually talk about more responsible businesses, which is obviously why I've invited you along. I know you've been you work with solicitors and businesses like that as well, and you were doing some gifting, and that's changed slightly, so tell me a bit more about that.
We like to try and have, most of our work comes through referrals. Over 90% probably is from either a solicitor, an estate agent, word of mouth, someone that's had some contact with us and says, if that's what you're doing, these are the people to go to. So we really value that. That's really important to us. So we like to work with those relationships. So in the past, we've always tried to maintain good relationships with people that refer work to us. We know we get over 90% of our work via referrals, really, really important, and we want to try and keep those relationships going. So in the past, we would maybe give out sweets, or we give out little promotional packs, little gifts, just to drop into the offices to say, we really appreciate you sending that work our way, and here's a little gift for keeping us in mind when people ask you questions. Yeah,
it's a nice thing to do. And we know word of mouth is a great marketing tool, right? Yeah. So, sorry, carry on.
So in recent years now, with mixing that up with our environmental position, we are now giving out, the latest thing we're going out is little bee bombs, little packages. It's a little bit come out of that chain of thought, thinking about the environment. So not quite a gimmick, but we might not be offsetting all of our CO2 with it, but it's just, now it's in our minds, this environmental impact, which is something we're trying to give in our gifts that go back out, something just to reflect that that's what we're thinking about.
Yeah, so you use these bee bombs then, so you obviously deliver them to your clients or whatever, and they can use them either on their office areas or take them home and plant them in their gardens, and it's wildflower packs, isn't it?
Yeah, they're just sort of little, effectively little balls of mud that have got seeds already in them. Our kids at home love them, so every summer we'll take them, we'll put them in different areas of the garden, and over the years they sort of continue to generate and multiply as the seeds come off the plants that are there before. You let it die back, it puts more seeds there, and every year it gets brighter and more colourful, and we're seeing the wildlife in our own gardens, and we're hoping we've maybe shared that a little bit, and maybe some small offices that have a little bit of space, or even if the people in the office take them home. And it means that we know that's going back into the areas that we're visiting.
Yeah, I think that's really important, isn't it? Yeah, I really like the whole kind of like generating the habitat and wildlife thing of that. I think it's really, really interesting, and it's just a really nice thing to do, you know? So, yeah, I love bee bombs. I love them, absolutely love them. But that kind of fits really well. And again, I suppose as a business, as an organisation, you know, given the building you're in and the way you work, because you've gone very much kind of like electronic and data held electronically, very safely and everything, but that means that obviously you as a business presumably have cut your carbon emissions and your footprint down massively, and there's maybe not many options for you to go to now to look at to help that even more.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So we started this whole process, the environmental, how can we address it? You know, we're a new business, so it was new to us, and we thought, well, what do we do here? And it was going to be really, really easy to write a couple of relatively small checks and get a certificate to say, answer some questions and get a little bit of paper that says, this is your CO2.
Okay, yeah.
We could quite easily find other companies that would take another relatively modest fee and say, and here's another bit of paper to say you've offset it.
Okay.
Job done. Yeah. And that would have been the sort of end of it. But that didn't fit with how we sort of work. We wanted to understand it a little bit more. And there's no obligation for us to do this. You know, we're not being audited by our professional board of the RICS. The government aren't monitoring it. at the moment. So we thought, well, if we're going to do it, we may as well really understand what we're getting involved in. So we reached out to the York and North Yorkshire Combined Authority, and they offered us some support to have meetings and to have a chat with some people there to really understand our different scopes of CO2, where it's coming from, looking at the building, looking at our operations. And then we had a much better understanding of saying, well, actually, we can't do much to the building. As we talked about earlier, the building is what it is, and there's not a lot we can do there. In terms of our operations in the business, there's not a lot we can do. We're relatively paperless. But our travel, we can't get away from that. So from a building survey or a building site, there's elements of travel that we have to go to. And we know exactly where they are because we know the postcodes of where we're going to. So while we can reduce that by not doing too many visits, we still have to go to them. So we knew what that number was, and we knew there wasn't a lot we could do, and we were going to have to do the offset. So then for the offset, again, we thought about whether we just write a check and plant some trees somewhere in the world and say we've done it. But we thought an opportunity there to sort of say, well, actually, if we know where we're going, can we offset it there? And that's where the bee-bomb idea kind of started. That's the sort of the initial thoughts behind, all right, well, what if we gave away trees, or we gave away... And at the moment, we're still working it up, to be honest. We're looking for people that we can speak to say, well, that pack of bee bombs, what does that do on year 1, on year 2, on year 3? So then if we know we've given out 100 of them, what is that as an impact? So it's taken a lot longer. I probably could have dealt with it in about a week, but it's taken a good few months to get to where we are, and we're still not there. But we think we might be able to reach out to small organisations, parishes, charities that potentially have the spaces and the people power to plant some stuff, but they don't have the capital, and we could potentially come in and say, well, if we gift you this, then we know we've offset it where we did a survey 200 metres up the road, and we think that's much more meaningful. We know it's not 100%. We know some of these sites will end up being wasteland again in a couple of years' time. To be honest, I'm quite comfortable with that. I'm okay with that. I don't need to say, oh, well, if you're not offsetting it and it's not 100% traceable and trackable, then it doesn't count. I'd rather be able to go around and say, well, actually, that bit of grassland there that is now meadow mix, that's because we do surveys in the area and we want to give something back. Yeah,
absolutely. And I found it really interesting what you said about, the fact you could have taken the really easy route and just written some checks. And, there are businesses out there that perhaps are only in that position, and it's still a great start, isn't it? It's a good tick in the box. But I think, from my point of view, you're absolutely right. You need to kind of look at what you can actually do internally, obviously, in your business first, and then look at what you can do to immediately impact kind of the social values or the community around you, which is, I guess, what you're doing now. So you're seeking out areas that you know that either are local to you, which will then offset the emissions, the small amount of emissions that you're probably giving out now, and then where your clients are. So it's really important that you are actually affecting those areas that you are directly working with, which is really interesting.
And that's the thought behind it. Wherever we do it, that's where we'll try and offset it. So you clearly believe then being a more responsible business is important then in the commercial landscape of the world? I think it is. I mean, it started environmentally in terms of understanding that. Not an obligation. Obligation sounds a little bit negative to me, really. It sounds like it's an obligation if we can tick the box and it's done. But an opportunity, really. And to be honest, that thought process of looking at something, reviewing it, it's something you do in a business anyway. You're always reviewing what you do. And at the moment, we're in the process of changing some other things in the business to do with physical file storage. So the limited files that we did have, they were starting to take up more and more space as we had less and less paper in them, though. So we were creating just physical files. And then all of a sudden, someone in the office says, well, if we're planting these bee bombs around the place to try and help the environment and be responsible, why are we printing this off, or why are we doing this? And as a team, we have a sit down and have a chat about it, say, well, do I really need this physical file? Could that be changed to something lesser, or could it just be digital? And at the moment, we're looking at moving out filing cabinets instead of moving in filing cabinets. And so making everything digital, which does still have some sort of footprint of its own anyway. It does have an amount, but clearly, like you say, the kind of usage of paper and the shredding, and then that whole life cycle of what happens to that shredded paper, obviously, because you've got important security documents and things. So how will you approach that? Are you still looking for other digital opportunities perhaps that are, again, even better from a kind of environmental emissions point of view? We're probably a little bit lazy, and we were already quite digital. So we're fortunate that we'd gone sort of all cloud-based and all digital before COVID. So we were fortunate when everyone went home, they took the computers and they could just pick up where they left off. So that was by chance as opposed to any sort of great business decision. But we're probably a little bit lazy in that we just stuck with the old process of setting up the files. Yeah. And when we went through the last 50 project numbers that we'd started up, we realised that all that was really being held on there was the contract, the offer, the acceptance, the consideration between us and the client, that initial thing. Drawings are mostly digital now. Not most people we send drawings to are also happy on an iPad, so it was just a little bit of laziness that we kept on doing it. So we realised actually if we do that, and it didn't have to be an environmental decision, from a business decision it's good as well. You know, a filing cabinet takes up an area of space that we have to pay for. So if we can, and we knew that in 10 years time, continuing on the projection we're on, that's X number more filing cabinets, that's X amount of space, that's probably moving office. If we can reduce all that, then we can potentially stay here a lot longer, be more efficient with our space. And that's good for everything as well as the environment, it's good for the business.
It makes commercial sense, doesn't it? Completely. Yeah. So there's both sides, absolutely. And when you said, obviously, you found this kind of responsible business as an opportunity. So clearly, I guess you've used it in your marketing, the business, or use it in your communications, whether that's internal or external. Would that be right? Or not as much
I think
yet?
we probably potentially missed an opportunity, or missing an opportunity that we should take. So the opportunity we've taken is that when we're reviewing things, we get everyone else involved and we're reviewing more than just our CO2. So what about reviewing the storage system? What about reviewing layouts in the office, other procedures? When we go out to site, can we go straight from home instead of coming in? So that mindset's there. Personally, I often enjoy the process. And then once I get to the end, personally, I don't really celebrate the goal too much, which is a personal development. It's something that I should really look at and say, well, actually, if you achieve something, we're good at it in the office, and we like to celebrate birthdays, we like cake and things like that in the office. But in terms of those achievements for myself, I sometimes overlook them. So we've potentially missed some opportunities saying, well, actually, we should shine a light on this.
For sure.
And particularly with environmental goals, but with everything that we do, we know that we're quite a small business, we're quite a small team, which can make us quite agile. You know, we all talk to each other, roles don't overlap, but we appreciate that we rely on each other throughout the team. So we should probably take more opportunity to celebrate, actually, we've done something quite good here in terms of whether it's environmental or the file system, which sounds a little less boring, but actually there was a bit of excitement in the office last week as loads of paper files were taken out. What a waste, why have we done this? So now we have to think about, and then that feeds into that, so now we've got all these old paper files. Like, what can we do with them? Do we just dump them in the bin across the road, or do we have a quick think about, well, is there another organisation that still uses these and can't get away from them that we can pass them on to? Because some of them are perfectly good. And again, that's that just continuing to take it through your whole business.
Absolutely. And do you find it's kind of reflective internally as well in the office? So, like you said, you're a fairly small business. But do you find that those values maybe go home with people as well? Are they becoming more kind of responsible at home? Or do you think it's literally just in the workplace because we know this is how we work as a business?
I think it's mostly in the workspace. It's mostly in the workspace. We do have conversations about, actually, I'm just thinking now, we do have that at home, or we do have that at home, or we do that at home, or maybe we don't do that. I think at home, there's sometimes easier to see the issues because you're paying your bills, especially when it comes to energy, and you're getting that through on a monthly basis. In a business, sometimes it's just seen as, well, that's the business's overhead, it's the business's cost. But again, because everyone here is so involved in everything, I think it's easier for them to appreciate that in the same way they do at home. In terms of all low energy LEDs, but in terms of turning the lights off, that's just simple mentality of, well, if we turn that off, or if we don't need to have the heating on, or that affects the business, or it affects all of us, and we all sort of buy into that.
I find it certainly in office buildings, it's a bit like having your kids in the office in some ways, telling them to turn the lights off, because I'm constantly telling my kids to turn the lights off at home. It drives me mad. So just back to the opportunity about kind of proclaiming yourself as becoming a more responsible business. Obviously, there's a pathway to that, and you're well on that pathway, which is great. Why do you think it's important for you as Johnson Clark, or as businesses in general, to organisations to become more responsible?
So from a business point of view, it'll become part of the consideration of the client, I think, fairly quickly. I think they're gonna. It's in the peripheral vision. You see little logos on websites. You know, this element of it. I mean, I know our reports will very soon, hopefully, be carbon neutral. Okay. So we can say that this report comes to you carbon neutral. We may have driven to your site, but we've managed to offset it. So, and at the moment, I don't know how many people value that, but like I said earlier, I think it's in people's peripheral vision, and it might be, oh, I got this report. It's a brilliant report. The contents is all there. It's got everything it needs to have. It's been really helpful.
Yeah.
And as a side note, it just happens to be a carbon neutral report. So I think people are picking up on that sort of stuff now. Like I say, it's not part of the conversation. People don't phone up and ask, what are your credentials yet? But I certainly think it might become, same way purchasing a house, your EPC or your efficiency results were not really something you would have considered 10 years ago, whereas now it's something you might go to quite early. It's something we comment on reports, and people want to know about, oh, so you said there wasn't much insulation in the loft. What kind of impact did that have if I did something with it? So people are becoming just that minded, and probably in the same way that we talk about it at the office and they take that home, other businesses are talking about it, they're taking it home, and then it becomes part of your home life. So then when you start to purchase a service or a product, it becomes part of that.
Natural conversation then a little bit, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. So even though you're not being asked for that information specifically by your clients yet, and it's not mandatory yet, which is great. But also, we don't want to wait for the whole big stick thing, do either. But so even though you're not being asked about that, is there a position, do you think, for you to be telling people about that?
Yeah, that's probably the opportunity we're missing.
So like really talking about not necessarily where your building set, although that's part of the story and everything else, but definitely all the kind of like the work you've done with the bee bombs, and I know there's some other stuff which we'll come on to in a bit. All that kind of big story is huge, and that in theory for me as a marketer puts you ahead of your competition really, because I don't know many other surveyors or surveying organisations are actually proclaiming that kind of stuff or talking about it or even telling the story of why they're doing it, never mind what they're actually doing. So, which
is probably the opportunity we're missing, and we're probably doing the good work. Which maybe another good thing that we need to be mindful of, that we genuinely feel like we're doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah, absolutely.
If it was just about ticking the box, we'd have got the paperwork and put it all over the website.
Yeah. We're
probably a little bit failing in that, you're kind of doing the hard bit, the hard way, and you're not even telling people about it. So that's probably something we need to take on board and make sure people know what we are doing and the work that we're putting into it.
Yeah, okay. And clearly you'll have some partners you work with, I'm not sure, up and down the value chain, one way or the other. Do you look for them to have certain credentials as well that fit with your values of the business, or are you not quite there yet with yourselves?
We're not quite there. In terms of things that we buy in, again, there's very little.
Yeah, well, I can imagine.
Very little.
I can't even think of anything off the top of my head.
No, and I know, and this is
surveying
where
equipment maybe or something.
And this is where, when we did our initial looking at the carbon that we were generating, a lot of the questions that we've been asked by the firms that were going to offer to do it for us were about where that come from. And it's like, well, we don't really have it, so taking the time to understand it ourselves means we better understand that. So we know that there's not a lot we can do with the building.
Yeah.
We know there's not a lot we can do with stuff that we're buying in, but that means that we can double down on the focus in terms of, we know it's travel is our thing.
Yeah. Okay.
So all right, let's really focus on that then. Is there just ways that we can reduce that? Yeah, they may be limited, but let's focus on doing that. And if not, the last resort is the offset.
I mean, it's a hard balance, isn't it? Like you say, I know certain jobs you'll have to go and view, but also, you are quite a customer-facing business as well. So you want to go and meet your clients, and there is that relationship building, isn't it? Rather than it just being either, I don't know, a Zoom call or not even that, maybe just electronically, electronic conversations. So yeah, it's a hard one for you to really completely curb the travel.
No, we do an amount of desktop. So if we get a new instruction for a survey or an architectural instruction, we will do a desktop sort of analysis of it. Okay. There's a lot of information we can get, Street View, Google Maps, historic maps. We have access to other report tools that give us information about the property, the location, the geography, the ground conditions. So we can do quite a lot of work up front, but sometimes we need to physically go and inspect the property. We can't get away from that. I don't think we will be able to get away from that. There are lots of new technologies coming out with cameras that can do part inspection from you, and the introduction of AI. But really, I think if we're selling a service that says we are going to look at your building and tell you everything we can about it, or we are going to help you create your home, because most of the time we are creating homes.
Exactly.
People want to have that relationship with us.
Yeah, totally.
So we think, well, that's something that we want to maintain.
Yeah, because you mentioned about AI there, which is, I don't know, it's a bit of a hot potato still, I think.
Yeah.
Certainly in my industry, it's still a hot potato. I know in certain other industries it is as well. And yeah, AI can take you so far, but I think even now, even though AI has not been out, I suppose, so long, although it feels like it's been here forever already, there's a case for, there's still that human contact, that human touch. And even now, I do use AI a little bit for prompting content and things like that, but I always make sure I put my spin on it, or the voice of the business I'm writing for, or whatever that is. So have you found AI a good fit for your business yet? Or can you see potential for it? Not yet, okay.
As an industry, from a surveying side, there is definitely scope for it to be involved in report writing.
Okay.
We still take quite a traditional approach, but for a good reason, in that we type everything in-house. It's reviewed a number of times before it's then issued. We need to make sure we get one chance to look at a property.
Yeah.
And someone's making a big financial commitment, so we take that responsibility really. We know there's a lot of responsibility there.
Yeah.
So we need to be focused when we're doing the survey, and then when it comes out, we need to make sure that we're communicating that survey to the client in the right language, in the right way, so that they fully understand it. So we found that AI isn't there in terms of helping us with that. The other aspect of AI within surveying is there are technologies where you can take photos, scans, videos of a property, and AI will help identify what the defect might be and what may be causing
that's
it.
That's really interesting.
But again, with the experience we have here in building pathology, we can detect that sort of ourselves. So it may be as a tool to help us point in the right direction. It may be, I see it in the future, again going off a little bit off topic here, but
that's okay.
In the future it may be something that clients can say, well, I've self-diagnosed this as this.
Yeah.
Can you give me a little bit more on that?
Okay.
That
could be quite scary, people self-diagnosing their building issues,
it could be, but
I'm not sure I want to do that.
It's the way it'll happen.
It'll
happen. They'll come to us saying that this is what I believe we've got. But we've got a lot of experience in terms of just the knowledge base that's built up over looking at so many properties. And I know our AI will have access to that. But it won't be able to physically do the things that we do. It won't be able to physically touch a building and have that contact with it. They're looking in the right areas. So we feel at the moment we've probably still got an edge. And we think we'll always have a place.
Yeah, well, I think if it's not prevalent in your industry yet, or even it sounds like it's maybe not even creeping in quite yet. So either the tech's not there yet, or it's not been ready to be adopted. So yeah, clearly the approach you've got obviously is working. It's a successful organisation for now. So going back to the kind of responsibility thing, do you find? I mean, you said that you don't necessarily use that as a marketing opportunity yet. Have you found that because word's got about what you've done with the bee bombs, for example, and how you work, and the fact you're becoming more sustainable as an organisation, do you find that that's helped you either secure clients or got your name being talked about a bit more, or do you think it's not even there yet still?
I think
maybe not used it.
We obviously publicise, so we have social media. So we LinkedIn, and we have other socials. So it obviously gets on there that we're giving these out, and whether people see it as just a gift, that's fine. But on the bee bomb, there's a little tag where you can scan, and there's a little bit more information about the reason we're giving this out instead of something else is. So there's a little bit on there, but we should probably let people know a bit more that there's a lot of thought process behind it, and the reason you're getting these is because we know we're having an impact, and this is our way of offsetting it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, I'm going to say that clearly. Maybe we should talk about some marketing at some
point.
Probably.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Shameless plug there, sorry. And then tell me, I know you've got some other stuff in your mind about what you could do other than the bee bombs, which is also, it's a brilliant start anyway. But I know we've talked about kind of trees and what you can or maybe not do with trees, but maybe there are other approaches that are better than some. So talk me a little bit, if you're happy to talk. I know it's very embryonic for you, so talk about maybe what you're planning, because I think it's fascinating.
So the bee bombs are what they are, the small little pods that go out, and I have no idea what the offset is, but I'd love to one day. And when I do, I'll let you know what the offset of a single pack of bee bombs is in sort of years as they go on. But we'd like to put together almost a little list of products, and when I say products, I mean planting. Of what they are, what type of plant they are, hopefully things that are native to the area because we're so local. And approach organisations and say to them, look, this tree will offset this amount of carbon over this many years. So to us, there's a value in that we can include that within our calculations. But obviously, we're happy to give you this tree or this number of trees. Or if you've got an area that's not suitable for trees, well, is there hedgerows that we can offer you, or is there a larger area of meadow mix? We're seeing some parishes not mowing certain areas of greens to encourage wildlife. Well, can we give that a little bit of a boost by saying, well, if we just give you a bag of meadow mix, is that something you'd be willing to use, willing to put down? And then we can track where all our surveys are. We can potentially track multiple locations where we've made that donation, so that the local organisation or the parish can make use of that, and that's helping us offset our carbon in those areas.
Yeah, I think it's it's a bit of a given in some ways that it falls naturally with you in the fact that you're going out to survey perhaps land or whatever else, a grid of lands, and therefore why wouldn't you also tag onto that some area of like wilding or whatever it is? Then you can again monitor that as well, can't you? So yeah, it makes total sense. So just in a few words, can you describe, we've talked about responsibility quite a lot, and you've mentioned it, obviously I've mentioned it. What do you think in the commercial world, what do you think makes a responsible business? Is that a tough one?
I think it is.
Sorry. Or a more responsible business maybe, not just responsible.
I think it's a big word, responsibility, isn't it?
And it is.
And rightly, it covers so many things. So we've talked a lot about environmental responsibility.
Yeah.
But again, by starting those conversations on environment, they start to go in other ways. So socially being responsible, and we try to do that here as a business. When we're looking at people that we're working with, can we be more accommodating as a business? Can we be more accommodating to people? I think there's a responsibility there as well. And trying to get it through all the things that you do. Are you being responsible? Not just in your professional services where you have to be. But just in everything that you do, are you being responsible in your actions as a company? That's a pretty big question.
Yeah. I know, it's a really broad word. It's a bit like the whole word of sustainability. It's also very broad, a bit like marketing as well, also very broad. But yeah, it's hard to pinpoint down, but it's always fascinating to get someone else's opinion of what they think responsible is. And I think you're right, carrying that whole through all the different areas. So obviously environmental, like you say, the social impact as well, how you work the business or the governance side as well, massively important. And for me, if you can harness all bits of all three of those. And I also love the way that you were talking about how you kind of on this pathway to becoming more responsible. You're not don't necessarily celebrate the end goal. You're probably not even at your end goal yet, but certainly in terms of this that we're talking about. But it's important to celebrate those little wins. So I'm a massive fan of your bee bombs, and I will always love seeing them about because I think they're great. So maybe a bit more celebration from Jonathan Clark on your achievements. I think it's good.
That would probably feed in, and it feeds in. Those things feed into so many other things. In terms of marketing, in terms of the outward, if we celebrate those things, then people know, and that potentially will get more clients, which is always good. But also internally, celebrating those things that we talked about the filing cabinets and things like that earlier. I saw a fairly boring subject. But actually, we've got a little bit more space now, and between us, all of us, we sort of did that ourselves. So
it all counts, doesn't it? Yeah. Definitely. Right. I can see some marketing planning going on. That's for sure.
We'll have a conversation after this.
Definitely. Okay. So just to finish off, then one final question for me, I think. Anyway, because I've always got another question lined up normally. So, in your opinion, for any businesses that are out there, organisations out there that perhaps are looking to become more responsible and just don't know where to start, where would you suggest? I mean, like I say, I know your business is very different because you've been working a bit like this for many, many years, actually, as it turns out. But what do you think is the first thing a business or an organisation can start to do to try to venture on that roadmap to responsibility?
Just to start.
Okay, good. That's a great answer.
The thing is, when you start looking at these things, we'll all have a different starting point. And just to sort of jump in and say, well, like we did, the first thing we did was make contact with our first step, which has not materialised into anything, was to make contact with a tree planting organisation.
Okay.
Fairly cold call, Google, and then from that, I learned that this seems a little bit too procedural, a little bit corporate. That doesn't align with the way we want to do things in one organisation, so we step back from that. And then we go in a different direction. So then we get in touch with someone, okay, let's start with the CO2. Just make the next step. Actually, that wasn't the right one for us, so we step back, and then we stumbled upon the York and North Yorkshire, and they offer something. But
Yeah.
It's crazy how things just sort of materialise, but you've
Yeah.
got to make an effort. Sometimes when you look at it, especially when you look at ESG, it's a massive thing at the moment, and
Yeah.
it's talked about in massive organisations like
Yeah.
your Googles, your Apples, but it's applicable and it does have appliances, and we will see the fruits of that, and it doesn't have to be the bottom line. It doesn't have to be profits and clients. It might just be the environment that we're working in here becomes a better environment, socially, a better environment naturally. It might become a better sort of from that point of view. But just take that first step, and personally, I'll do that with anything really. You're going to make a first step. It's all right to back out of something. You can
good
backtrack.
advice as well, actually.
Take a first step towards something and realise, okay, this doesn't really fit with us. And just know sort of who you are and what your organisation is, and let that sort of take you through the process a little bit.
Yeah. And I know you mentioned obviously the Yorkshire, what was it called? The Yorkshire?
York and North Yorkshire Combined Authority, they've got a growth hub.
That's right, and they were offering some funding to kickstart some of this as well, weren't they?
They actually offered us some funding for a CO2 assessment of the building. But we didn't take that up in the end because after a quick conversation with them, we knew that a building that had been built so recently, with the consideration that was put into it, that wasn't going to be worth it. All they were going to say was, well, there's very limited scope here.
Okay.
So,
but you could have used that maybe as a benchmark to say where you were starting from, or have you already got that in a different manner?
We did that. Instead of taking the funding to speak to another agent, we worked with individuals at the Growth Hub who helped us understand, offered us some software that we used, had a conversation with us, explained the different scopes, what would or wouldn't be included in certain things. So we have a much better understanding now. Instead of getting a report, we were part of generating that report. So we've got the report and we prepared it ourselves with their support, and we can do that annually now going forward to monitor it.
Perfect. So you started, you got your benchmark, and then all these lovely ideas have come out. That's amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
It's been an absolute privilege. I hope you'll come on again at some point.
Definitely,
maybe when your next stage is in process.
Yes.
And you've celebrated lots of your other things.
We'll find a way of celebrating these things. We must do.
That's great, Stephen. Thanks ever so much. Thanks for watching. See you again soon. You've been listening to the Responsible Marketing Podcast. You can contact me by email at joe@joelongconsulting.com or find me on LinkedIn. All recordings of the podcast can be found on YouTube, as well as where you usually get your podcasts. If you've enjoyed listening, please hit subscribe, which helps the podcast be found by more people. And of course, feel free to share it on your socials. Until next time, thanks for listening.